to be said on any given day is shocking. Here he is responding to questions about inflation numbers, which broke this morning at the highest levels in 3 years, due in no small part to the surge in energy prices because of the war in Iran. Okay, I'm sorry, the sound is not playing. I'm just going to read it to you because it's important to hear it. So what happened was, do we have it now? Okay, let me play it.
To what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation.
He really said that. Now, it is hard to get your head around a president of the United States saying that. When he was asked, he said, not even a little bit. I don't think about Americans' financial situation, especially on the day when he found out that prices are rising so much that they are more than eating up any wage gains that Americans have. We're having a little difficulty with the sound. Let me see if I can play this exchange.
You promised to bring inflation down. It's now at its highest level in 3 years. Are your policies not working?
No,
What's
my
happening?
policies are working incredibly. If you go back to just before the war, for the last 3 months, inflation was at 1.7%. Now, we had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well.
So just some fact checks on this. First, the premise that Americans are suffering inflation because otherwise Iran would get a nuke. That is false, not just by the assessment of U.S. intelligence, which of course calls that false, but by Trump's own words. He said, quote, it was a total obliteration when it came to the U.S. destroying Iran's nuclear program back in July of 2025. So to say that inflation numbers right now, that it was either this war or a nuke or inflation, that is false. That's first. Second, inflation was not 1.7% before the war. It was 2.4%. And third, inflation is up. And it is not just up to the highest rate in 3 years. It is, as I indicated, rising more than wages. It means that any wage gain you get is eaten up, and then even more by rising prices, which means Americans are poorer. Paychecks grew 3.6% from a year ago. Prices rose 3.8%. And a meaningful part of the reason for that is energy prices, which are surging because of the Iran war. Gas prices, in fact, are up 65% in the past 6 months. Now, some of that even predated the war, by the way. That's why that inflation number Trump had put out was false. But people are feeling serious pain now. And again, this is what the president said about that pain today.
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation.
I don't think about Americans' financial situation. Well, that's the president of the United States. So then what is he thinking about? Well, he did answer questions today about the ballroom and the reflecting pool.
You may want to go see the reflecting pool because that's under construction. And for the first time since 1922, it's going to work properly. We have a ballroom that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule. I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. You can double the size. You are not a smart person.
That's the president of the United States. And his behavior today came after he spent much of the night seemingly awake. Maybe that's why he's so testy, posting and reposting on social media. In fact, since 10 o'clock last night, overnight, more than 75 times. Do you know anybody who does that? Including posting a picture of a $100 bill with his own face on it. He posted that. He also posted Mount Rushmore with his face being etched into the stone. And then he posted an AI-generated image of former Presidents Obama and Biden, along with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, swimming in sewage. So he posted all of those things in those 70-plus posts. Kristen Holmes is traveling with the president out front live in Beijing. So, Kristen, right, with all of this that I just laid out, you are actually in China for one of the most incredibly high-stakes moments of this presidency. What more are you learning, though, about how frustrated Trump is with the war, with the bad economic numbers, that sparked him to tell the American people that he does not think about their financial situation, not even a little bit, before he got in the plane?
Yeah, I mean, that was wild, Erin. And I do want to be very clear. There are so many White House officials who have been telling him day in and day out that inflation is a problem for him, that higher gas numbers are a problem for him, that this war in Iran is a problem for him because it is causing problems within the economy, which they believe that Americans care the most about. Just a reminder, part of the reason that President Trump was successful in 2024 is because his team and he were tapping into what Americans cared about in terms of the economy in a way that others just weren't. Now you see President Trump distancing himself from this. Now, President Trump grows increasingly frustrated when he feels like the messaging isn't on his side, when he feels like he doesn't have anything to rely on to talk about the positives. He is one who likes to spin any situation, and it's becoming much harder to actually spin what's happening with the war in Iran and what's happening currently with the economy. President Trump there, lashing out at reporters. This is what he does when he can't spin the narrative in the way that he wants to spin it. And I will tell you, going into this, as you said, consequential summit with President Xi, this is happening at a time where now the Iran war is looming over this. President Trump thought it was going to be over by now. That's why he delayed this 6 weeks. He thought this wouldn't be something that was going to cause any kind of overshadowing of the summit. But yet here we are again. And you heard him in this back and forth with reporters at one point saying he didn't really need the help of President Xi. Well, we have talked to a number of U.S. officials who say that is part of the plan, to push President Xi, to push their counterparts in Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz, to come to a deal. That is going to be part of this long conversation. But I will tell you, when I am talking to these U.S. officials, when I'm talking to White House officials, they know how serious the problem the economy is right now, particularly as we head into those midterms.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. It's 7 o'clock tomorrow morning in Beijing. All right, right front now, Sean Patrick Maloney. He is the former Democratic congressman and ambassador under Biden, S.E. Cupp, Republican strategist, and of course, regular here, and Adam Kubisi, financial analyst and founder of the Kubisi Letter. Adam, can I just start with you, because we were starting with some of the basic facts here, and Trump's stunning statement. It will be an unforgettable one when he said, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation." Inflation has not been this high in 3 years. Those are the numbers we got out today, Adam. And you have drilled down on just what that means.
Yeah, so, our thesis for the last 12 plus months has basically been own assets or be left behind. It's been pretty widely stated now. And that has really been the situation. It continues to be the case because of the fact that inflation, not only did it not fall to the Fed's 2% target, but now it's back up to 3.8%. And we're dealing with effectively what I like to call compounding inflation. So what does that mean? You had years of inflation that are now having inflation on top